We're here on Daf Lamed Ches, and we're up to Sholchu Lahem Chacham. And if you recall, we had a long discussion about that family, that notorious family called Beis Garmu, who were the experts in creating and manufacturing the Lechem Aponim. And the Chachamim tried to replace them with the experts from Alexandria. They were not successful. And now they are rehiring the Beis Garmu. And the Beis Garmu are playing hard to get. You know, if you get fired, you're insulted by that. And if your employer decides to rehire you, you're going to play hardball with it, especially when you can jack up the price because the employer realizes that you're irreplaceable. Only when the Chachamim agreed to pay them double salary did they return. So this is the Beis Garmu. B'chol Yom, before they were fired, the Tanakama of this particular brisa says that they doubled their wages from 12 to 24 months per year. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, before they were fired, they were paid 24 months. Vayom, now when we rehire them, we have to double it to 48 months. Why is it that you refuse to teach us and share with us your insights and your expertise? They responded, Yodim Hayu Shal Beis Abo. We have a tradition from our ancestors that the Beis Hamikdash will be destroyed. We're afraid that if the expertise becomes public knowledge, maybe it'll get into the wrong hands of someone who will use this to bake these breads. He will use this expert knowledge to create lachme shtei lechem for their idol worship, their idolatry. The aldover zeh maskirin osam l'shvach means the following: that initially the Chachamim did not accept their justification, and they would mention the name of Beis Garmu Lignai. But v'aldover zeh maskirin osam l'shvach, there is one element in the behavior in the detestable behavior of the Beis Garmu that we have to mention l'shvach. And what is that? Shalmi olam lo nimtzeis pas nikia biad bnei. They would never allow any of their children to eat a pas nikia. Why? Because a refined flour that's used to bake a bread, yomru mimasa lechem aponim, the spectators, the onlookers will suspect them of taking the lechem aponim and sharing them with their children. And in order to avoid any possible misunderstanding, they would not allow their children to eat any bread that was made of fine bread, fine flour. L'kayim Hashem, and this is a fulfillment of what it says, V'yisem Nekiyim Me'Hashem U'Yisrael. And you're not allowed to do something which could be misinterpreted, misconstrued by the spectators who will suspect you of violating the Torah law. Now, why would the spectators think of such a thing? Is because the Beis Garmu did not have such a great reputation. The Chachamim were not satisfied with their justification, their explanation. So maybe the Beis Garmu, in the eyes of the public, was suspect of taking the Lechem Aponim and making it in such a way that they could share it and bequeath it, so to speak, to their children. they went out of their way overboard to avoid such a chashash. They never let their children eat from a bread that was made from refined fine flour, as the lechem upon was made from. So Beis Avtinus lo ratzu lelamed al maisak Torres. Rabbanan Beis Avtinus ayibikim the maisak Torres. They knew how to identify a certain herb that grew in the fields called Maila Oshon that would facilitate the pillar of the Torah going straight up vertically into the sky. Lo ratzu lelamed. They refused to teach it to others. They brought in, imported these workers from Alexandria that were experts in crushing samamon and various herbs and spices to make a ketores out. But they didn't know how to identify that one specific herb called male ochon. They didn't know how to find it. And therefore, they couldn't get the ochon, the pillar of smoke, to go straight vertically up. And therefore, it was not the same as shalalalu, like the ketores that was prepared by the Beis Avtinus, which was metamer v'ola kemakel, because they identified mala oshon and added it to the concoction. The pillar went straight up, pillar of smoke, kemakel, like a reed, like a stick. Shalalalu, but the smoke that came from the ketores that was prepared and manufactured by the experts of Alexandria, maftzia, lakan. It immediately dissipated in this direction and in that direction. There was no mala osh. Sheshonu chacham b'dover amru kol ma shebara kodesh baruch hu l'chvodo bara. Anything that God gave you, any talents are given to you for kavod Hashem, to bring out the glory of God. Shenemar kol pol Hashem l'maneu. Everything that God created was l'maneu, to bring out this glory of God. And the glory of God in the case of ketores is this amazing pillar of smoke that goes up. And now you're refusing to share it with others. And v'chazu beis avtinos limkovan. However, the Brisa ends with the following postscript, that at the end of the day, they had to bring back the Beis Avtinus. They couldn't deal with the ketores that was created by these experts from Egypt, because they needed desperately that to bring out the glory of Hashem, that Oshan that goes straight up like a makel. No one was able to produce a ketores of that sort except for the Beis Avtinus. They had to rehire the Beis Avtinus. Once again, Sholchu Lehem Chachamim. After the Chachamim replaced and fired the Beis Avtinus, only to realize later on there was no one who could do the job, and now they're rehiring the Beis Avtinus. Beis Avtinus says, you know what? We're not coming. Kafel and schar, and they had to double their wages. Ubo, and then they came. Shebechol Yom, again the same machlokas. So you know, Lim Shtemes Arbona Vayom Esrim Arba. Rabbi Yudo Bechol Yom Esrim Arba Vayom Arba Mishmod. Here we have a base minimum wages for the Beis Avtinus of 12 money. In rehiring them, they had to double it to 24 months. Rabbi Yehuda is of the opinion that even before they were fired, they were paid 24. So according to Rabbi Yehuda, Hayom Arba'im Mishmona, they had to double their wages from 24 to 48. The Rabbanu wanted to give them some sort of a Pesach, an opening to explain and justify why they wouldn't teach us about the Ma'ala Hashem. Amru Yodim Hayu So Beis Avish Beisayis Beisel Asli Charev Hashem Yilon Odom Shem Behugon Yelech V'Yavod Avos Kolchov Mekach. We're afraid that the secret of the Torah, the Maila Oshel, will get into the wrong hands and it will be used by idolaters, and therefore they refuse to reveal the secret of Maila Oshel. Chachamim did not accept their justification; they thought it was just a fig leaf. But al dover zeh maskirnos om l'shva, they avoided any sort of accusation of the spectators because of the pasuk v'yisam v'kiyim in the following scenario, and that is may olam lo yotzos kala mevusemes mibateim. Now, what's a kala mevusemes? Let's say there were daughters, obviously, in the Beis Avtinus that had to get married off. And in those days, like today, when you marry off a girl and she goes into the chuppah, she wears perfume of some sorts, cosmetics. They didn't allow their daughters to wear cosmetics because someone might suspect them of taking from the Ketores in order to create this perfume, this fragrant odor. If they marry a woman from a different town who's not familiar with the local minhag, maslin ima shalotis basem, they made a condition in the marriage relationship that there would not be any bosun. And I have here a note in the name of the Yerushalmi that it means li'olam. That members of this family are using the Ketores for their own private purposes of lisbasim. There's a very striking parallel here between the base Garmu in the case of Lechem Aponim and the base Avtinus in the case of the Ketores. In both cases, they bent over backwards to avoid a violation of the Yis and the Kiyim, to avoid any chashad. But in both cases, they gave what the Chacham considered an excuse as to why they refused to share their knowledge with us. Tanya, we learned in the Brayso of Rabbi Shmuel Pamachas Hayisi Mahalach B'derech. It was after the destruction of the Mikdash, and I was on the road. Matzasi echem mibnei bneihem. I found some of the descendants of the Beis Garmu, or perhaps the Beis Avtinus. Amarti lo avosecha bikshu laharbos kvodom. Amarti lo avosecha bikshu laharbos kvodom. V'ratzu lemay kvod hamokom. Achshav kvod mokom b'mkomo. Umiet kvodom. Now that the Mikdash is destroyed, there's no kvod mokom. We don't have the lechem aponim. We don't have the ketores. Wait, I'm not sure what happened exactly, because in the next story they actually capitulated, but in this story, what happened? So a minute here, because I just want to get the punchline of the story. Did they give in or not? Oh, he writes here in the name of the Meiri that Midivrei Rabbi Shmuel Yesh Lumod She'af Shechachamim chazru b'hem lebasofi omru she'ein lesaper b'gnusav al shalorotzel olam mishe emes hoisek havanasa l'shem shemaim the af his kirum l'shvacham aleh mikol kom nenshu b'zeh al shahoye b'hem shemetz his kavdus al yidiyaseyah. Wow, this is complicated. Very sensitive psychological presentation here of the Meir. That on the one hand, it seems like the Chachamim actually accepted their justification as to why they didn't want to share this knowledge, but yet at the same time, the Chacham say they'll be punished. They were really walking a tightrope. And he says that although they had the right kavanos to some extent, nevertheless, their punishment was because there was an admixture of self-interest in which they wanted to be miskabe, they wanted to get a great deal of honor and glory and dignity based on the knowledge that they had. And that we saw from the fact that they doubled the wages, and they were playing such hardball with the Chachamim. Now the Gemara is going to tell another two stories about Tanoim who had exposure to these families. And in one story, they came down hard on these families, and the other they accepted. Rabbi Akiva, Sachli Rabbi Shmuel ben Glogo. I have a story that I heard from Rabbi Shmuel. Hamachas Yatzosi, this is Rabbi Shmuel speaking in the first person. Anivi echad mibnei bneihem. I, one of the Tanoim, went out on some sort of a trip to the fields to gather together some of the bounty of the fields. And we went out together with the children, the Bnei B'neiim, which means grandchildren or great-great-grandchildren of Beis Avtinus, with Sada L'Lakid Asad. Ra'isi Shebocha V'Sach. I saw that this one descendant of Beis Avtinus was crying and laughing. Amarti lo, mipnei ma b'chisa. This reminds me a lot of the Gemara at the end of Masechet Yoma, if you have any idea what I'm referring to. Any side point. Why were you crying? Amalek kfod avosai niskarti. I remember that when the Mikdash was when it existed before the Churban, how the covet of my base Av was upheld, because everybody depends upon him to get the Ketores. So then he says, so okay, I understand why you're crying, because with the Churban, the covet of your avos is gone. But why were you laughing? That when the third Mikdash will be rebuilt, at that point God will give it back to our family. What jolted your memory to remind yourself that you have a Kabbalah, a tradition that they will eventually rehire? Amali, my law. Why do I look at this field that I'm out there and I'm collecting, and I see Mala Oshim? This must be a message to me that eventually my family, my descendants, will be reinstated. Yeah, right. Oh, so now Rabbi Shmuel says, can you show me where you saw it? And this would be great, because if he points out where the Ma'aloshin is, now we have the knowledge. We took an oath as descendants of the base of Tinus, that we will never reveal the identity of the Mala Osh. In the footnote, he quotes the Miri again, who says, "Ma'ases zeh shevach ulaher shenimtzu mibnei bnei avliachar achurban shoy v'tufim kol kaf v'rachmei Hashem la'shovas beis hamikdash al makom." This is the shevach that these descendants of Beis Avtinus were absolutely convinced, without a shadow of a doubt, they relied on Hashem that there will be a rebuilding of the Mikdash. Another story. Amar Rabbi Yochanan ben Nur, Pam Achas. Apparently, the Beis Avtinus had documents in which they would write exactly how to identify the Ma'ala Oshon. Maybe they drew some diagrams. And it was critical that this mismach, as we call it in modern Hebrew, right, that this document be passed down from father to son, within the genealogy of the Beis Avtinus. So now, I see that, says Rabbi Yochanan ben Nur, that this man, this elderly gentleman, is holding on to this document, which he calls Megillas Samamonim. Marti lo, me'aynat. What family do you belong to? Amali, the Beis Avtinus. So now Rabbi Yochanan returns to this descendant of Beis Avtinus. He says, "Uma zeh biyodcha, what are you holding on to?" Amali Megillah Samamonim. This is the Megillah which will reveal all the secrets of the Samamonim, the Ketores. So Yochanan ben Nuri says, "Harayuli, show it to me." I don't know if he had a photograph machine or a photographic memory, but he wanted to see it. Amali. So this descendant, the Zokin Echad, says to me, as long as my father's people, his descendants, were alive, they would be very careful about the secret of the Ketores. Now that they're gone, these are the magic words, but Vizarba, he asks Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri to be very careful. Nothing let it out of his hands. If I get into the wrong hands. When I, Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, shared Rabbi Akiva the whole story, from now on, notice, even though the Chachamim never accepted their original excuse, and they spoke so harshly and negatively about the Beis Avtinus for not sharing their knowledge, and they even quoted the pasuk V'shem Rishoyim Yirkov. But now, says Rabbi Akiva, from this story, we see that they were really speaking the truth, and their kavanah, their intention was l'shem shemayim. And we have to stop this business about speaking the gnai of the Beis Avtinus.
Rabbi?
Yeah.
But if the original reason they didn't share the formula is because they were afraid it would be used by idol worshippers, the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash doesn't change that, unless idol worshipping also disappeared with the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash.
Right. That's what I think he says here in the bottom. Let me just read it to you. He says, "Mi ma'ases zeh lo nisbar b'divrei hazokim madua lo maser esoda l'bnei mishpato kiderech she'asu avosav u'mashpesh lo nosar mimenu ish." He says the following, that as a result of the Churban, not only was the Mikdash destroyed, but massive amounts of Jews were destroyed. And he's claiming that there was no one left in the lineage of Beis Avtinus.
Okay.
And now the secret was in jeopardy of being lost for all generations. So at this point, he understood that there's got to be some trustworthy Jew outside of the family of Beis Avtinus, because the Beis Avtinus family was wiped out, who would be very careful, as he says to him, he's Zoyarba. You remember those two words? He's Zoyarba. Be very careful with this knowledge. Make sure you don't just publicize it to other people. Is therefore, since we see that they felt that as long as there was a continuity to the family, they could guarantee that this knowledge would be known, and we needed at the time of the rebuilding of the Mikdash, then we shouldn't be mesaper b'gnusam. They were very sincere when they finally realized that it's not going to happen, that their family were destroyed. At that point, they would give it over to someone who they felt was trustworthy, the Gadol Ador of Yochanan Nuri, in order to guarantee that this knowledge would not be lost, and that eventually they'd be able to create and bring the Ketores and the Beis Hamikdash.
Do we have a tradition about the preservation of this Megillah?
I don't know. I doubt it. It would be nice if, we went to the, what's it called, Kipat HaSefer in English? How do you call it? The dome, whatever it's called. You know what I'm talking about? Outside the heat. Yeah, outside of the museum. And maybe they have this Megillah. But I don't know that you'll find it there. I don't think so.
The Shrine of the Book.
Shrine of the Book, right. That's what it's called. Shrine of the Book. In any event, the bottom line is this where we'll end for today, is that from now on, Rabbi Akiva says, we're not going to quote this pasuk B'Shem Rishayim Yirkov with regard to the Beis Avtinus, because from this whole story with Rabbi Yochanan Nuri, we see it's clear that they were speaking truth, that they did have a kavanah l'shem shamayim. He says, Me'ata vadai lanu shehem iskavan l'shem shamayim. Therefore, aim leganos. So again, the key words here is mashba shalom nosar mimenu ish. That's what I want to emphasize. There was no one left from the Bnei Mishpacha, from this family. All right, there's another interpretation here of the Meiri of the Yerushalmi, but we're not going to get into that now. Let's just, unfortunately, I don't have a pencil here, but let's just make a note that we're on the bottom of Daf Lamed Ches Amud Aleph. And again, we're going to try to feel this out. Maybe we'll push it one more day or so, but we're going to start the last parak of Mitzvah Hashem either on Thursday or if you can get a hold of the Gemara. And if anybody wants to fill in the missing blanks here between, let's say, Lamed Ches and Ayin Gimel, how many blot is that? Let's see. Lamed Ches is 38, 40 is 2, and 70 is 3, about 35 blot. So if you want to fill in that 35 blot, you can follow me on Daf Yomi. Again, it'll be a much more fast pace than what we do here, but at least you'll have the entire Masechta in your back pocket, so to speak. Okay, then. So have a great day.